Good morning. Welcome to the September 26th County Board meeting. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, the next thing on the agenda is open forum, and that's to speak about things that are not on the agenda. So 3 of my things for open forum are on the agenda. The HRA is on the agenda, so at that point I will have you talk about those things, if that's okay. The Rick Felt constitutional limits.
My name is Sergeant Rick Felt, Brainerd, Minnesota, Woodrow Road. I'm here today to talk about the Constitution a little bit and what it provides and what it doesn't provide. And I come to you today with a heavy heart because when I pledged allegiance to this Constitution when I joined the Army, not only did I promise to give my life for my country, but I also pledged my sacred honor. Nowhere in this Constitution do I see that the government is supposed to gain more and more power. This Constitution guarantees a government that is restricted on its power. And now we're talking about updating our policy, comprehensive plan and everything to gain more power and to take more freedom away from the people. For the first time in Crow Wing County history, we now have people leaving this county because of the high crime rates. Thank God we got Sheriff Kling and Deputy Bradley doing their best to kind of rein that under control. People don't mind paying higher taxes if they have good schools, good roads, and freedom. But we see all of that eroding in this county. Our public school system has gone from number 10, which was a tremendous achievement, now down to 161. In the state, out of 330. We see a tremendous amount of eroded benefits, but we see higher and higher taxes. Last year, we had the highest inflation rates ever. And you said, but we only raised taxes 2.9%. And yet you see people that are under financial burden and everything. And now you're talking about giving away an extra $1 million. As I walked into this courthouse, old courthouse, I saw the 10 Commandments. It says, "Thou shalt not steal." I want to pose a question to you. Is it stealing to take money from the taxpayers and giving it out on 0% interest? Those are piercing questions that we need to ask ourselves. And taxation without representation. If we have people here behind me that are against some of these plans that you have, and yet if you forge ahead with them, I just want you to think about the Constitution. Are you eroding the Constitution? I know you didn't pledge your life to uphold it, but you did pledge your sacred honor the same way I did. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who has something that they'd like to talk about that isn't on the agenda? Anyone who'd like to speak to something that isn't on the agenda? Okay. Review and approve the minutes of September 12th.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Coring, second by Commissioner Hoag. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Review and approve today's agenda. Are there any changes?
There is a change.
What is it?
Madam Chair, 5.11, the contract for professional services for project CP 18-200-137 needs to be put on the regular agenda per the county engineer's request.
Okay.
Madam Chair, motion to approve with that one change to the agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Coring, second by Commissioner Barrows. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda without 5.11.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda without 11.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Lubke, second by Commissioner Barrows. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 5.11.
Sorry about that. I didn't expect it to be right away. I have one item for you today, and I think, Teresa, can you pull up the item under consent? Not that.
Yep.
The item I have for you today is a contract and another partnership with MnDOT. Recently, and over the last couple years since the four-lane expansion from Nisswa to Pequot Lakes and then up to Jenkins took place, there's been a challenge with one of the intersections there, and that's 29, 107, and 371. This is the one right on the border between Nisswa and Pequot Lakes. The city, the elected officials of both city of Nisswa and Pequot Lakes have come forward over the last few years about their concerns about that intersection. I too had voiced my concerns to the traffic engineer at MnDOT and requested an initial study a couple years ago about some sight distance challenges. And since that time, there have been some serious crashes, including a fatality within the last year or so. And so some more recent correspondence from the mayor and council from Pequot Lakes triggered some more activity at my office and then also at MnDOT to take a look at it. MnDOT is willing to take a look at it, but as with many of the other items that are on their plate, it hasn't risen to the priority. And that's where I would like us to help step in and raise it on the priority by upfront funding an intersection control evaluation to take place immediately starting this fall to look at what's going on there, what are some potential opportunities for improvement to stop the things that are happening there. And so like with the 210 and 371 interchange, I would like to enter into a contract that's in your packet with SEH, or short Elliott Hendrickson, who has helped us on the 371 corridor, enter into an immediate contract with them to do this study, traffic study. And then MnDOT has agreed, just like a 210 and 371 arrangement, to pay us for it and reimburse us after the work is done. So the benefit of this is we get to address this concern for our residents and the elected officials that are in those areas to address this traffic. It does not include construction, but just like any project, we must study and find the best solution first. This will help us then seek money and advance this project if there's some solution that comes out of this study. So I'm asking for your permission to sign and enter into a contract with Short Elliott Hendrickson for an amount not to exceed $25,000 to do the traffic work needed at this important intersection.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question? I want to try to wrap my head around where this is at. Is this where you go right between Twin Lakes?
Yep. Yes.
It's the kind
Yes.
of the S-curve there? Okay.
One of the challenges along this whole corridor is the very narrow median and what I call a two-stage crossover. If anybody's been up on that corridor and tried to stop in the middle and go across two lanes and then stop in the middle and then proceed across and find your gap, it's extremely challenging. This is one of those areas too, and that's something we need to explore further if we can improve that.
Madam Chair, that is in the district I serve, and to egress or ingress or even try to cross that if you have anything other than a small car, it is nearly impossible. The line of sight is terrible. looking to the south when you come in off of, I think it's 107.
Correct.
And I have been up in that area, and I avoid that intersection at all costs. But there are other people who can't because of the way it's done. And I definitely would make a motion to approve the contract with SEH to go ahead and do that, I think sooner than later. There has been numerous accidents there and numerous ones maybe that haven't even shown up as accidents, just the squealing of brakes and trying to get around there. So
Did I hear you make a motion?
I made that motion.
I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Lubke, seconded by Commissioner Coring. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
It sounded like a motion.
Sounded like one.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the public hearing, petition to vacate portion of Wonder Road.
Madam Chair, I would so move that we, the county board, move into the public hearing, and that's a motion.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Coring, second by Commissioner Barrows. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay,
Good morning.
good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here on behalf of Al Hollingsworth, who's standing to my right. We're seeking to vacate a portion of Wonder Road in the plat of Wonder Acres. Your staff has reviewed this application. In particular, I'd refer the board to packet page 139. Land Services staff has indicated that there's no known public uses and needs of the requested area, that the legal description has been verified, and that the intended use reason for request has no negative impacts. The Highway Department, likewise, on page 140, has indicated that there's no known public uses and needs of the requested area. While the report doesn't specifically recommend vacation, I would note that Mr. Bray's additional comments tend to support that vacation. It indicates that allowing an access point at this location for a high-volume traffic generator would be problematic for the operation of County Road 49. That's Wise Road for most of us, I think. Conceptually, this is an area that's located between two other points of access. One is Gilbert Lake Road and the other is Crappie Bay Road. And so adding another, I think page 136 is the plat. Wonder Road is there on the left. You can see where Crappie Bay Road is. To the west is Gilbert Lake Road. So there is already a road that accesses properties further to the south of the plat. Those properties south of Wonder Acres, the plat of Wonder Acres, do have access to the lands and have been using alternate accesses. This road is not developed. It has not been used. It was in the plat, and currently it has a driveway on it that my client uses to access Wise Road, and it's never been in use, to my understanding, by the public. Accordingly, we're asking that the board vacate that portion of Wonder Road as set forth in our petition and accompanying documents. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak? Please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Jeremy Prame, 10290 Gilbert Trail. So I own the land directly to the south. First, I don't fault Alan for asking for free land, right? I would probably too. I'm a little bit upset at the way this went down. I think they're trying to take advantage of you and an oversight of your staff. I've only talked to Alan one time. This easement came up. I said, look, that's for access to our property out to Wise Road. You know, we have an interest for it. I actually talked to the county engineer a couple years ago because, as you can see from the picture, Alan sort of uses it as his own. I can't actually get through there without taking trees down because he's got all of his personal property on it. One thing I would ask is the county ensure that Mr. Hollingsworth keeps his property off of the public land. I talked to his attorney, Tom Pearson. They both knew I had an interest. If you look at the request, I'm not even notified that this is happening. So that upsets me. They both knew. They're deliberate in trying to sneak this through. You guys, that upsets me, not the fact that he's asking. I bought this land, full disclosure, to stop it from being developed, right? I live on the property just to the east of this, right? I didn't want it developed. Nobody on Gilbert Trail wants it developed, right? It's a dead end. There's kids, there's pets. It's a quiet street. It runs along the lake. That said, like, I don't know if I can keep it from being developed forever. And losing this access to Wise Road would be detrimental to the value of the property, right? Hopefully, best case scenario, that never has to happen. But until like that, the entire parcels to the south there, it's 17 and a half acres, in some way could be transferred to the public. Even in that case, I would expect my property directly to the east shares an access with this. I would likely split that off so that the property to the east has its own deeded access that my house and residence is on. And the 17 and a half acres ideally could be in some way transferred to the public and prevented from being developed forever. Like, that would be best case. I would still expect the public to have access through this easement. God forbid, you do have to, or not God forbid, it's not that dramatic, but if it does end up being developed at some point, right? There's 35 accesses off Wise Road in that, I'm making up the number, I don't know exactly. But you can see on this picture, like both sides, every 120 feet, there's an access on Wise Road. So while I acknowledge, the county's view or the highway department's view that like traffic matters, like that's one consideration, you're gonna have a whole bunch of upset residents if you try to route traffic down along the lake, plus probably environmental concerns, and add a bunch of traffic through what is a quiet neighborhood today, right? So when that ever comes up and somebody's coming before you to plat this out, hopefully it's not me, that's when you can make that decision. It's not now, right? I don't know, that's sort of it, right? Even if I had to sell a part of it, I would probably sell the part behind Mr. Hollingsworth's property, like carve off something there and there'd be one access and they'd share it, which is, again, probably better than 90% of the accesses off Wise Road because they share an access. You're not putting any new access points on Wise Road. So even if it's just used to pull utilities, right? Everything else is the end of the line for the utility, gas, electric. You'd be much better pulling all of that off across that easement off Wise Road. So I just can't fathom why this would be in the public interest. So I'm just here to make sure. I didn't see it reflected in the staff comments. They were all pretty passive. Again, I wasn't even on the list of being notified. I got a letter last Tuesday, predated as of the 13th. I think, Therese, you probably called Tom Pearson and told him because he called me and like, did you call the county? So somebody talked to him. So I think he patched together a notification and sent it to me. And I had talked to him a month and a half ago. Like, they both knew I have an interest in this easement, and they tried to slide it through. And if I had not been proactive in calling to find out what the status was, I'm not even sure I would have been aware to be here today. And that's a little dirty. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, can I ask a question? I think this gentleman will know. So the blue, we're looking at that blue, that's the part that's proposed to be vacated. Then going further down on the bottom of the page, what is that skinny part right there? Is that another easement or what is
No,
it?
it's a parcel I own, so it's the other half of the 60, so that's a 66-foot public easement that's highlighted there. And then
Skinny one.
the skinny one is like the 33 feet. It runs, I don't know, not much farther down there. It's just to marry up the land so that you could put the road through. But it's a separate parcel. I'm not sure the history of it, why it's split out separately.
But that is a public easement, that skinny part down
No,
there?
I
Or
don't
no,
know.
it's not?
I
I
own
don't
it.
know that today.
Okay.
It's a parcel, we can tell that, but I can't tell, we did not research what easements may or may not be on that parcel.
There aren't any. You can research it, but
Why is there Madam Chair, why is there like a skinny line up on top, right, going perpendicular to the road? What does that mean?
Wonder Acres was a plat.
Oh,
And so the plat starts on the west with that road and then continues to the east. I don't think we have the entire plat on the map up there. I think there are a few more lots in the plat, but it was a plat that ran parallel to Wise Road and then had this easement on the west end of it, presumably to access south of there. I don't know. I wasn't the
Called
platter,
Wonder
but-
Road.
Yeah, it's called Wonder Road.
so then, Madam Chair, so this 99270708, that's your property?
And the little sliver west of that.
And that little easement thing that you were talking about.
Okay,
It's not an easement, it's a parcel I own.
okay.
And
It's
don't,
small, if you pull it up on the, I don't know if you can pull it up on the mapping, but you can see
well, it looks like with that little sliver, that at some point, someone was thinking that they needed that to continue on with the 66-foot road. It's
Yeah,
not
no.
like,
Yeah, it's
you
pretty
know,
clear.
there's,
Yeah,
it was presumed that that road would go through at some point, and so someone bought that and left it like that. Don't you own a couple more properties that would be south of this property too?
I own 2 to the east.
Okay, that's what I thought. And I know there's been talk about Crappie Bay Road being viable. That's a 33-foot
Yeah, so
township road.
from the looks
so-
of it, like Wonder
Yeah.
did things pretty well when he laid out his plats and he deeded road accesses and was
Well-
somewhat organized. The property east of Crappie Bay Road, like, I think most of the people with the history have moved at this point, but that was pretty contentious because the property east of Crappie Bay never deeded the other 33 feet. So Crappie Bay Road, my understanding, runs down the middle of a property line. Half of it's on private property, half of it's on a 33-foot easement. The property owner to the east has no desire to deed the additional 33 feet to put a public road in. So that's been contentious
And
for a long time.
this is an unorganized territory, and in an unorganized territory, we have a policy that the roads have to be 66 feet. So this is a 66-foot easement, but Crappie Bay is only 33 feet. That's not a viable option to get
Yeah, so
into
it
this.
limits, I think there's 4 or 5 properties that access off Crappie Bay, which I think they're at the limit of what they can, my understanding.
Yeah.
I just talked to the neighbor briefly one day, but I'm not up to speed on it.
And I know there's another access on Gilbert Trail, but that's also not a 66-foot easement. It has a, so neither way at this point is what the county requires. The only way to get into this is with this easement. And I personally can't see vacating something that may be needed for future. You may not be there forever, and possibly the next person will want to do this, and trying to get an easement back is not easy.
Yeah, I don't see, look, I didn't press the issue to get through there because I didn't want to, whatever. I don't have time to
Yeah.
argue with neighbors, so I didn't want to start a fight. And, but if we're talking about vacating it, like, I think that's a big mistake at this point, right? If you can do something permanently with that plot of land, it's in the lake impact area, right? It'd be a nice piece of property to make sure we don't develop at some point, and then you could potentially decide to do something with the easement if you don't need public access to it. It's just not today, right? And I can't guarantee that we'll be fortunate enough to be able to do that down the road, right?
And if you would, sell off part of this, even the lots right behind, that's the only easement to get
Yeah.
into there
Yeah.
at that point.
That was, Madam Chair, if I can ask, so this 99270708, if that was the only parcel you owned, would that be the only access you have to get in there?
Yes. So if you
There is
sell,
access off of Gilbert Lake Trail. I don't know if it meets all the,
it's not a 66-foot, I've already checked that out.
yeah, so you can get at it. And we obviously own the property to the east, so we would just cross the property line. But again, my intent, yeah, there you go. So that little sliver up in the top left, so that's that, and the bigger chunk is the 2 parcels I own. You see it has access down to Gilbert Lake Trail, which I use, and there's an easement for the property to the east, the 707 property. Ideally, right, at some point, if you do something with the 708 and the little sliver, I would move the property line over so the 707 has its own deeded access. It doesn't have an easement and a shared access. 708 could be developed or ideally put in some program so that it's not developed. But
And you own one of the parcels that goes out to Crappie Bay too, don't
I
you?
owe the 710.
Yeah, I thought so. But like I said, that's only a 33-foot township road, and that's
Yeah.
not up to the unorganized territory requirements. Does anybody have, is there anyone else that would like to speak?
I just comment on what's been said. There are plenty of roads that aren't 66 feet that people use to access their property, and the question is there access? And there is. You're talking about a road that actually only would access a single property, and so you're speculating about whether it would be necessary for development in the future.
That road goes to quite a few houses back there, not just one.
It doesn't, though, because that's the extent of the road. That blue square.
Oh, I'm talking about Crappie Bay.
Well, but that blue square is the extent of the road. So if the county is prepared to, use eminent powers of eminent domain to acquire additional land there and then develop that into a road, then maybe that would make sense at some point. But is that the county's plan? We're talking about accessing a single landowner's property potentially at some point in the future, when we've just heard that the landowner accesses that property via 2 different public routes where there's legal access. So you're talking about a 66-foot access that basically runs the length of 1 lot. It's not needed. That's why your highway department, your land services department checked the box that it doesn't serve a public purpose, because it's really only needed for a private landowner. And he doesn't even really need it because he has legal access to other places. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes?
Mr. Person, there was a question of notice, and so there is the legal requirement to vacate this road. You would have only been required to notify the people who were in Wonder Acres, because the road was carved out of that plat.
That's all the,
We asked you to notify folks surrounding the plat, and now I'm hearing from this gentleman he wasn't notified. Did the surrounding parcels get notified, and if so, when?
So I'm actually Dan Hawley.
Oh, I'm sorry, and I
Yes.
know that, don't I? 'Cause-
Yes,
I do.
yes.
Sorry about that.
Yes, I'm standing in for Tom Pearson today.
Okay.
My understanding is that notification was made. I don't know when. I know that Mr. Pearson did speak with, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name, but the gentleman who just spoke.
Okay.
And that I think he indicated he received a letter of some kind as well. So I understand from discussions with Mr. Pearson that he did have extensive discussions with your office about additional people under the statute that might need to be notified, but we did notify everyone in the plat. I believe that there was a certification by Land Services that everyone was notified
Okay.
to their satisfaction, so that's all. Without Mr. Pearson here, I can't give you further details.
I just wanted to point out that the legal requirement they're obligated to is only to the plat owners. We understood your issue and required that they notify all surrounding property owners, and told them we would raise the issue today if they did not. Thank you.
is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak?
Wait, 1 second. Right, you could put 13 lots on that 17 acres, right? It's not one piece of property, right? So I think you guys understand, so I'll rest.
Thank you. Anyone else? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Is there anyone else?
Madam Chair, I would so move that we close the public hearing on the petition to vacate a portion of Wonder Road.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Coring, second by Commissioner Barrows. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Nay.
Okay.
That was to close the public
You
hearing.
don't want to close the
No,
public hearing?
I was thinking we were at something else. Excuse me, my mistake. Sorry, Madam Chair.
That's
That
why I
would be
just
an
went
aye.
over. Okay, the next is order to vacate
Okay, that's,
Wonder Road.
Madam Chair, you just held a public hearing on whether you should, and you're taking public input on whether you should vacate Wonder Road. Enclosed in your packet is a resolution that would accomplish that purpose if you were so inclined.
And if we aren't so inclined,
Don't pass the resolution.
okay,
It probably would be better to have the motion be to reject the petition, and so I think affirmative action is probably a better idea. This is a resolution to approve it. I think a simple motion to say no. You might want to have some discussion about why.
well, I think I've pretty well stated that this goes into a property that could be developed into many properties, and I've watched what has happened before when we vacated a road and then needed it, and to me, it's just not a good idea. I mean, at this point, Mr. Pram says he's not going to develop, but he may not own this property forever, and the next person could want to develop it, and we'd have landlocked it. So I just don't agree with, I don't agree with vacating. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, if there is no other discussion, I would make the motion to reject this petition.
Is there a second?
I will second that, Madam Chair.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Barrows, second by Commissioner Lubke to reject the petition to vacate. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of rejection of the petition?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Drug-Free Communities Grant.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Kara Terry from Community Services. I am here to request permission to approve the Drug-Free Communities Grant monies being received by Community Services. So the Drug-Free Communities Program was started through the Drug-Free Communities Act of 1997. The purpose of this funding is to address two major goals. One is to establish and strengthen collaboration among communities, public and private nonprofit agencies, and federal, state, local, and tribal governments to support the efforts of community coalitions. And second, to reduce substance use among youth and, over time then, among adults. The DFC program is funded and directed by the Office of National Drug Control Policy and partners with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention for day-to-day management. While responsibility rests upon us for receiving the grant in terms of achieving primary goals of the program, the CDC is going to monitor and provide continuing technical assistance, consultation, and coordination in the execution of our project during the funding period. As a part of this federal grant, we were required to meet a number of statutory eligibility areas. I'm not going to go into them all as those were included in the application approval, But just to highlight a few, the coalitions, which would be our BLADE, or Brainerd Lakes Area Drug Education Coalition, must have at least one representative from required 12 sectors. Some of those sectors include schools, law enforcement, community providers, the community, and community services. In addition, the primary principal mission must be to reduce youth substance use. And finally, we need to provide data every 2 years on a number of core measures like past use within 30 days, as reported by the students, perception of risk or harm, perception of parental disapproval of use, and perception of peer disapproval of use. Crow Wing County was one of 2 agencies in the state of Minnesota to receive this funding. It is a 5-year federal grant receiving $125,000 each year. You might have heard we had the Recovery Walk last week as a part of our Brainerd Lakes Area Coalition, Brainerd Lakes Area Drug Education Coalition, BLADE. We had about 200 participants. It was very well received. Commissioner Barrows was able to attend. It was a wonderful sense of community and support for those individuals and families who have experienced substance use disorder. Talia Broadhead, who is in the audience today, is our BLADE coordinator. You folks approved the hiring of Talia through the Minnesota Prevention and Recovery Alliance, funded through our federal opioid dollars. We would look to now fund Talia's position out of this DFC grant instead, thus freeing up that additional monies for the federal opioid grant. That's a lot of information to lay out. I stand for any questions you might have.
Any questions? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I would make the motion to approve the receipt of the federal drug-free community grant.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Barrows, second by Commissioner Hoag. Any discussion? I've already asked that once. Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Public nuisance. Good morning.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm Bethany Imgrid, Crow Wing County Public Health Educator. I've been working on a public health nuisance in Irondale Township for the past 2 months. You can see the plot up here. There were multiple nuisances that were found at my initial site visit that include quite a lot of trash throughout the property, and it's household waste primarily. I have been working closely with the property owner. They've been very good and responsive and as resourceful as they can be in trying to abate the nuisance themselves. I think we've just reached the point at which we need to possibly step in because there isn't enough progress being made on this nuisance in order to abate it prior to like a season change. And I'm not sure if they have the abilities to do it themselves either. I've given them 8 weeks, and like I said, they've been responsive and they have been working. There's just some mechanical issues that they've been having, just difficulty in removing the items from their property. So they have done some work. I think they've taken 2 or 3 loads to the landfill. I think there's probably another 2 or 3 dumpsters that need to be removed. At this point, what remains on the property is still a variety of household waste that's scattered throughout the property. There is a small structure that is partially collapsed that poses a risk to anyone who might curiously enter it. And then there are some household furniture items, couches, chairs, things that are padded or fabricked. So in addition to having some safety risk concerns, there's also the risk of having the unnatural habitat for these rodents and insects that it's harboring and attracting. So at this point, I'm seeking approval to have the county step in and abate the remaining public health nuisances prior to any big change in the season so that we can make sure that we remedy the whole nuisance.
Madam Chair, if I might, for clarification, Bethany, in the comment section here, you say that you want to be prepared for it. So are you giving the landowner some additional time
I think I'd like to have a
immediate-
discussion with them. I have not gone out for bid yet, but that will be my next discussion with the property owner, is like, I'm gonna bring someone in, we're gonna go for a bid, and once that bid is in and I know that there's a contractor and I can get a date, it just gets tricky this time of the year, they're all busy, trying to get everything done, so once I have a date, I guess ideally they'd have it abated themselves prior to that, and it's possible, but I think at the progress and pace that they've been making is unlikely, so that's why I'm here.
Additionally, how much time has taken place since we initially contacted them about the issue?
The letter was dated July 31st, and she contacted me, I believe, a week later. So 7 weeks I've been working with them.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I was so moved that the Board of County Commissioners do hereby pass the resolution declaring a public health nuisance at the address of 20975, is it Private Driveway? Private Driveway, Ironton, Minnesota.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Coring, second by Commissioner Hoag. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, the next on the agenda is the county sheriff.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I only have a few things I'd like to mention. It's just some recent changes within the Sheriff's Office. I'm sure you're all aware and remember the retirement of Troy Nash, our Lieutenant of Patrol Operations at the Sheriff's Office. So I just want to acknowledge his replacement, 27-year veteran of the Sheriff's Office. I'm sure you're all aware who it is, DJ Downey, has decided to accept the role of Lieutenant with our Sheriff's Office in Patrol and Investigative Unit, which opened up a promotion within the field of investigations. He was our investigative sergeant for the past 10 years, and we filled that role with Chris Brosey, who is also an 11-year veteran of the Sheriff's Office, and most of that being in investigations. Just want to keep you up to date on what's going on in the Sheriff's Office. At this point in time, I don't have anything else to share, but if you have any questions, I will entertain any of your questions.
Any questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
County Attorney.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I don't have anything for you today, but I certainly want to answer any questions if you have anything to ask me.
Anyone? Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, County Administrator.
Madam Chair, yesterday there was a senior management team meeting. Our primary discussion was about the 2024 budget. It, basically consumes us this time of year, trying to put the finishing touches on the budget. That was our primary discussion. Happy to answer questions about that or anything else related to county government.
Any questions?
Your budget presentation is next.
All right. Next on the agenda is the 2024 preliminary levy resolution for Crow Wing County and unorganized territory. The HRA has been separated into a second.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. For those in the audience that don't know who I am Nancy Malika, the Finance Director here for Crow Wing County, and I do have a brief presentation regarding the 2024 preliminary levy. We will start off with we're going to focus our presentation. Oops, sorry, Trace. Now again. Yep, perfect. Thank you. Today's presentation is to review the levy funds within the county budget. Those levy funds consist of the general fund, the highway fund, the community services fund, and the capital projects fund. When I come before you in December for the levy presentation, I will also focus on the non-levy funds at that time. But for today's presentation, we're going to focus on the levy funds. The levy fund revenues are listed on the table on the screen. The property tax levy, we are proposing a $45,909,662 levy amount for the 2024 preliminary budget. This is a 3.99% increase from 2023. Also listed on this revenues chart are the other revenue categories that are listed along with the dollar amount increases and percentages there as well. Overall, the 2024 preliminary budget revenue is at $100,586,664. which is a 5.15% increase from 2023.
Madam Chair, before you move on, can you go back to that slide?
Sure.
Can you just explain that a lot of the money that funds the county actually comes from the state? I don't know if somebody wants to.
We'll have a pie chart that shows you.
Okay.
So this pie chart shows you the 2024 revenues broken down by the different pieces of the pie. And you'll see that the property tax levy portion is the largest piece of the pie at 45%, followed by intergovernmental revenue, which is 35%. And to your point, Commissioner Coring, that would include state aid, county program aid, police aid, city and township reimbursements, and state and federal grants is what is under that category. And then followed up by other taxes, charges for services, and so on and so forth. This next slide shows you a graph of comparing the 2023 property tax levy to 2024. And in the general fund, the increase is 9.18%. The bar graph in blue shows 2023, and the orange bar graph is 2024. For the highway fund, that is at a 0% increase. Community services has a decrease of property tax levy of 5.43%. And capital projects has a 0% increase. Levy fund expenditures is next, again comparing 2023 to 2024 in the different expenditure categories. You'll see those listed there to the left: public aid assistance, personnel services, services and charges, and so on and so forth. Total 2024 preliminary budget for our expenditures in the levy funds is $106,109,940, which is a 10.43% increase from 2023. You will see some decreases on the expenditures on this slide. Services and charges saw a decrease of 2.2%. Debt service saw a 100% decrease, as we no longer have any long-term county debt on the books anymore. And also other expenditures saw a decrease of less than 1%.
So, Madam Chair, can I ask a question on that? So the county has, I know the answer to this, but the county has no debt. We have no airport bonds, or we have no debt at the joint facility up in Cross Lake, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And then the pie chart shows you those expenditures and breaks it out by the different slices of what makes up that total expenditure amount by percentage. Personnel services is the largest piece of the pie at 50%, followed by charges or services and charges. And then we move on to public aid assistance, supplies and materials, and so on and so forth. Next, we will move on. We'll take a little bit of a deeper dive looking at the service centers within each of those funds. So for the general fund, we have the governance services, administrative services, public safety services, and land services. And then those each have their respective divisions under those areas. We also have highway services, which is under the highway fund, and their respective divisions. Community services, which is under the community services fund, and their divisions. And last but not least is our capital projects fund, which is our capital improvement plan.
Before you move on, may I ask a question? And I don't mean to put staff on the spot, but Andy, I guess I'd like you to come up and talk about a little bit about, because, and I'm actually glad there's a lot of people here today, because usually there's hardly anybody here to hear about what we're doing. And the Sheriff's Department asked for 2 extra patrol officers. And I believe when we had our meeting, you said that there has not been any change in that for the last 20 years, if I'm correct, if I remember that correctly. And can you just comment on why, with the drugs coming in, pouring in here, and why you, the sheriff and you thought that you needed that, those positions?
Yes, obviously, we haven't had a change in patrol since the late 2000s. We've had additional staffing increases in the sheriff's office, but not in the area of patrol. Obviously, we all know that currently today our issues are fentanyl. Some of the drugs that are coming into this county are increasing. Our drug task force is tasked with trying to intercept these drugs as they're coming into the county. Is becoming an overwhelming job for us, the sheriff's office. Our belief is that we need some more support for our drug enforcement officers through our canine program. Adding 2 additional officers will allow us to add a canine officer and get our other canine officer in a situation where they're allowed to actually help support our drug task force and our partners in the community to help to fight the drug influence that's going on in our county, and that's coming in. It's the key factors to catch it when it's in the cars while it's coming into our county and not while it's here. We want to get it on the road, and what better way to defend against that is our canine program. So adding the additional officer and getting our current canine officer into a situation where they're freed up to actually be available for our officers to utilize at any given time, any moment, for day shift and night shift was key to trying to help those teams take care of the drug issues that are going on in Crow Wing County and stop them. Fortunately, our drug task force has been doing a great job at trying to do what they can with the bodies they have. We were trying to figure out what's the best way to support them with talking with them and discussing what the need was. It was obvious that that support was a big part of what they needed, which was the canine program, to get one that was significantly available to help when we needed them. So adding the extra canine and the extra body to give our canines some flexibility in their shifts to available to work in the street is what we need to do to help fight the drug problem we have here in Crow Wing County.
Well, I appreciate that. And Madam Chair, I would also say that I think you guys have done an excellent job trying to recruit and retain correctional officers. I don't know if anybody has seen what happened down at Stillwater where the prisoners wouldn't go back into their cells. And when I watched the press conference from the department, the Commissioner of Corrections, it was scary. He says, I'm over 300 employees short. And if we can't have the employees to keep the bad guys in jail, Don is working in Don's office, the county attorney's office. I don't know. I've kind of lost track now. I think either 4 or 5 murder cases. It's scary. And so that's why I'm supporting you guys to add on these extra patrol officers. I just think it's needed.
Thank you, and we appreciate the support from the county board in regards to getting us the bodies we need to do the job that we have to do. It's getting more and more difficult every day in law enforcement to do our job, and the more support we can get from our county commissioners and our public is key to us being able to be effective.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next slide that we'll look at is the service center revenue. So we broke out the revenue based on the different service centers of the county. So you'll see those listed off to the left, and you'll see the dollar amount increases or decreases. Highway services was the only area that saw a decrease, and that is due to the funding that they are going to need for their 2024 projects according to their highway improvement plan.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry about asking so many questions, but I think this is really, no, I'm not, and this is really important, you know, and Tim, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I do want you to come up, and I want you to explain to the public that you have run your operation, and if I think I'm remembering correctly, with 37 employees, which I think taking care of about 600 miles of road. And the winter that happened last year where they were literally, you know, going in and going home and taking a rest and then coming out and plowing, keeping the roads plowed. And I will say that I know the people in southern Crow Wing County, I'm sure all the citizens of Crow Wing County appreciate the good roads, but boy, I'm telling you what, we're getting some good roads. And if you look at what Tim has been doing, we've got a decrease in the highway, but Tim did ask to add another employee, which I think takes you up to 38, which I wholeheartedly supported. I don't think you've had an increase in employees there in a long time, so I guess I'd just like you to explain what you're doing there and all the challenges that you have as far as trying to retain people. We just had somebody from the highway department who was an excellent employee, but he left because somebody's going to pay him more money. And so that becomes the challenge too, is to try and retain these good employees because the offers are juicier somewhere else. So anyway.
I'll just say, like any other private or public entity, labor And the constriction of the labor market affects us just like everybody else. And we did have a key departure. It was in our maintenance department. The addition that you approve or are approving is to shore that up, actually restructure just a tiny bit to provide a little better coverage, and then also better supervision and things like that. So the highway department, we are down this year in these revenues, but that doesn't mean we're doing any more or less. We're putting a lot. That's a pretty darn big number, and I think our neighbors would like to have, $22 million program each year. And so that doesn't mean we're doing any less. It just happens. Maybe we didn't get a federal grant this year, in the coming year is all. We're still doing very well with the local option sales tax. It's continuing to grow. It's actually doubled since you or this board passed it in late 2015, and we have not added staff. And so we're getting at a critical point where if we've doubled our revenues, we're continuing on trying to deliver these services at the cheapest cost in-house, we may be looking at adding staff. So that isn't a request this year, but it's just letting you know that the increases in revenue, we need the staff resources to be able to deliver those.
And Madam Chair, if I could make one other comment, I would just point out the fact that I very seldom admit that I was wrong, but I will admit, and I've admitted it before, I was the only one that voted no to have the 0.5 cent on the sales tax because I am just adamantly opposed to taxes, but I'm not afraid to admit it. I was wrong on that because I'm seeing the fruits of that labor where we would have never been able to do what we're doing now because it would have been strictly on the property taxes, and people's property taxes would have skyrocketed to pay for these projects. I think we would have seen double-digit increases in property taxes. So now the people that are coming to Costco, they're coming to this hub of Crow Wing County from all over, they're helping to pay for our roads. And why not? Because they are using our roads. And so I think it's turned out to be excellent, and I can speak for my constituents who don't ask for much, but they just want good roads to travel to work, and we're achieving that. So I appreciate it.
Can I just add to that?
Absolutely.
A few slides back, it showed that the highway department had a 0% levy increase. That we are able to leverage these local option sales tax, that's what you're referencing, and diversify their uses that still meet the requirements of the statute. And so although we're adding personnel, we feel that the services that they're providing, we can leverage those local option sales tax to keep the property tax down and then share those services with our residents, which is over 50%. At the time of the study, 50% of the revenue coming in was coming from our guests that come to shop and enjoy our area. And so that's how we're keeping the property taxes down. We're diversifying those other revenue sources to pay for the services we're providing. And I'm proud of that, and just want to highlight that.
All right.
The next slide is a pie chart showing you the revenue for the different service center areas. So you'll see that the largest piece of the pie is community services at 34%, followed by highway services, and then public safety services, administrative services, governance services at 6.3%, followed by land services and capital projects.
And Madam Chair, may I indulge the board one more time? Cara Terry, as long as you're here, I guess I'd like you to come up and talk about the important things that your department is doing as far as child protection, and we've got a lot of people that are on probation that you can go ahead and tell the important things that I think you're doing so that people in the community know that this is the county trying to protect people, and your department's a big part of it.
Thank you, Commissioner, Madam Chair, County Board. Community Services does do a great deal of work that is mandated by the state. We do provide child protection services, so keeping kiddos safe either in their homes or in foster care placement. We also do provide community corrections, probation over adults and juveniles. We oversee our drug court and our alternatives to incarceration court and our DUI court. So we have a number of different opportunities there. The biggest piece, I think, for the community services revenue this time was our continued push at the legislature to increase the corrections funding. Community corrections had not had any increase in their revenues for many, many years. So we were operating on a lot of county levy dollars. We were able to work with our constituent groups down in at the Capitol to increase our grant by about $1 million, which is a huge impact. So that's how we were able to achieve our negative levy this year, was through that advocacy program. I appreciate the Sheriff Andy's comments around the work that they're doing to try and arrest and stop the drugs coming in. We are at the other end where once those drugs come in, they impact our community members, then we are the services that help get folks healthy and become productive members of the community again. So it's all one big circle, and we're so blessed to be a part of that and to have your support, for example, with the Drug Free Communities Grant that you just recently approved to help impact that as well.
And Madam Chair, I would just point out one other thing that, this legislature that I adamantly am opposed to, all the crazy stuff they passed, we at the county, and tell me if I'm wrong, county administrator, we are really the administrator of these programs that we really have no choice in, for the most part.
Most states in the United States do their health and human service function at the state level. And so you will travel to a regional state office in order to access those services, and you will work with a state employee. There are a few states in the Union, Minnesota being one of them, that decentralizes that system through counties, and counties become the administrative arm of the state to provide the health and human service function that is traditionally provided by the state. And so they do send resources, but they also send a boatload of requirements with those resources. And I would argue you probably wouldn't agree with every one of those requirements. It is what it is. And so we become administrative arms of the state. They tell us what to do. They tell us how to do it. We use their systems to do it. It's a decentralized approach. I think the thinking is that it is better for area residents to be able to access a service locally, to maybe talk to somebody that they will run into in the grocery store or at church, and that there are, more relational connections if we do that at the county level. I think I would argue that's the best reason for doing it at the county level, is that it's closer to the people.
And the other thing I would add to that, Commissioner Coring, is that we have the ability to hold our staff accountable to your level of expectation in relation to how the work gets done. We have pretty high standards here at Crow Wing County, and we have some pretty darn excellent employees, and we have some really good ways of tracking the work and monitoring the work to ensure that we're getting the best bang for our buck.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next slide are the service center expenditures for 2024 in comparison to 2023. Again, the service centers are the governance services, administrative services, so on and so forth. Most of those areas saw an increase, with the exception of highway, had a minimal decrease, again, based on the projects that they have slated for 2024. And then we have the pie chart that just kind of outlines the different areas of the service centers for the expenditures. So the largest piece of the pie, again, is community services, followed by highway services, public safety, administrative services, and so on and so forth. Next, we'll look at the unorganized territory, and we'll start off with the revenue side of the unorganized territory. This consists of the first assessment district and the second assessment district. Property tax levy in the first assessment district, we are proposing a 5.88% increase, which is a $69,000 $1,930 increase from 2023. There is also some intergovernmental revenue that falls under the first assessment district as well, and that has to do with the state gas tax, and that's at a 5% increase. So total first assessment district revenue is at a 5.85% increase. For the second assessment district, we're proposing a property tax levy increase of 4.9%, which is a $3,916 increase from 2023. The second assessment district also has state gas tax under that intergovernmental revenue category, and that is seeing just over a 5% increase as well. So total second assessment district revenue is seeing a 4.91% increase from 2023. And on the expense side for unorganized territory, again, we'll start off with the first assessment district. Overall, expenses are decreasing by 5% in the first assessment district, and in the second assessment district, expenses are increasing 161.97%. And the reasoning for that large increase in the second assessment district is that every 5 years there's a gravel project that occurs within the second assessment district. 2024 is that year. So that's approximately about $180,000. And so that's what is impacting that expenditure budget. And then the bar graph just shows you the comparison from 2023 to 2024 between the first assessment district and the second assessment district. And those percentages, again, are listed at the bottom of that table. So in your packet, there were a couple of resolutions. One relates to the county funds, relation to the governmental funds. We're proposing a preliminary tax levy of $45,909,662. In the first assessment district, we're proposing a tax levy of $1,258,993. And in the second assessment district, we're proposing a tax levy of $83,811. We also have a second resolution in your packet relating to the Crow Wing County HRA, and the amount that was listed in that resolution is a tax levy of $777,880. And with that, I will answer any questions or anything you may have.
Are there any more questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion for the preliminary levy for Crow Wing County and unorganized territory?
Madam Chair, if I might, I would make the motion to approve the 2024 preliminary levy resolution for Crow Wing County and unorganized territory, except for the HRA, which is
11.2, it's totally
right.
separate.
So my motion is for Crow Wing County and unorganized territories.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Motion by Commissioner Barrows, second by Commissioner Lubke. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now, the next thing on the agenda is the preliminary levy resolution for Crow Wing County HRA. And before we even start, I'm going to tell you that there are people who signed up for open forum to speak about the HRA. I will allow that to happen before we have any motions on this. So if you want to start with the presentation, then I'll go to open forum or public comments.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I don't think we have any discussion for you on the HRA.
No presentation.
No presentation?
No
Okay.
presentation?
I
All
think
right,
the
then I will start
request is
with,
for a 3.5% increase.
then I will start with the open forum section or public comments. First, Mark Olson.
So my assumption is it's not a 3-minute forum. Tim, did you just say you assumed it was a 3.5% increase?
It is a 3.5% increase as it is proposed in the resolution.
Okay. And that resolution, did I just see that
It's-
at 777?
That's the way it's printed today. Right there. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, that's kind of good to hear. Okay, so what you guys are gonna, what you're telling me right now is the vote's gonna be on 777,880?
We prepare a packet for the board's consideration.
Correct.
And typically, Mark, that's what happens, typically, but they can make a motion
Sure
to
they
do what they
can.
wish.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
That's all.
Well, that's somewhat good news. But I'll just continue what I thought I was gonna bring. There's so many issues about HRA. I thought I was only gonna have 3 minutes, so I was gonna talk really quick. But there's housing in HRA, there's social engineering, there's growth in the county, there's funding of nonprofits, there's a responsibility of county government, there's taxes, there's who serves on these boards. Plus, we just saw the county has over $100 million budget, which I think you guys are doing a pretty darn good job. But the issue is HRA. And that's kind of a quasi-government agency. And my assumption, I'm kind of going off track here because of how this has went awry. You guys, in 2020, it was 729,000. And 2021 was the same thing that you proposed. 2022 and 2023, and I'm sure most of you guys are aware of this, these people probably aren't though, there was a reduction in the trust fund of 400,000, but the amount was increased to 748,000. Now, to me, that makes no sense. Obviously, what happened was the management fee went up. That's a problem. Then I find out, but I see now it's not going to happen. It appears, but the motions could go different, that it was, HRA put out $2,377,000 proposal. That would have been over $1.5 million increase in HRA. That's insane. Absolutely insane. I don't know where these people are thinking of, but I think I figured it out. Baxter approved a 64-unit project in September of 2022. The building of that project started in the fall of 2022, according to the Brainerd Dispatch. But it appears HRA board approved, they approved the project funding for that in June of 2023. Now, that doesn't make any sense to me. None whatsoever. Normally, when you're doing a project, you get the money up front. You go get your money, and then you see if the project's viable. So in June, it appears the HRA approved that money. That's kind of strange to me. Then there's the project, which goes right along with why I perceive they wanted this 1.5 million. There's a project in Brainerd on 8th and Laurel, the old Hardware Hank building. Brainerd City Council has already approved TIF funds, which I totally disagree with. If developers want to do jobs, it's their job, not taxpayers' money. TIF is taxpayers' money. So I totally disagree with Brainerd City Council, but we're here for the county. So then HRA is proposing $1.3 million to give to this project. And if you can put those numbers together, it's not hard to figure out why they wanted 1.5 million and a little bit extra for the project downtown. Now, that makes no sense. You guys, we just sat here and all these people sat here and watched this whole, which was really good for people to see it, how the county is spending money. Now, this is pretty simple. This is really easy. Now, what I would do if I was sitting there, I would reduce, not increase. You guys are increasing the HRA, 777,000. It was 748. That should be decreased, not increased. People are paying higher taxes. They're paying more for their gas. They're paying more for their food. And you guys are increasing it. Be stewards of the government. Decrease it. But now people say, well, we have to have housing. That's the big push. We need housing. We need housing. Well, I'm not so sure that's the case. Is it we're going to build the housing and then the people will come? It's like the, remember that movie that Kevin Costner was in, Field of Dreams? Build it and they will come. Are we building these units so they'll come? Are we building this in Baxter, 64 units, so people will come up to the area? And on 8th and Laurel, are we building that so people will come up to the area? Just like we talked about, there was 4 good county employees, all the county commissioners over a week ago speaking at the county comprehensive plan, and I asked the question to all the county commissioners, is the county in the business to build housing? And you guys all said, oh no, we aren't in that business. Well, it appears you are in that business. That's not the business the county should be in. We shouldn't be funding HRA to that degree. I'm glad to see what's there now, but I believe you guys should be reducing that, saving more taxes for the people in the community, not increasing it. You've already increased it. I think the figure was 106 million, and last year it was 95 million, if I'm remembering correctly on there. Now, I get it, things are going up, but where you can cut, you should be cutting. Just like somebody mentioned the airport up here. You guys could cut money from the airport. The airport is lucrative right now. You could cut money there. So where you can find places to cut, I believe you should do your due diligence and do that and save taxpayers' money. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, before we go on, I would like to just respond real quick to the one remark that we all agreed with your statement. I did not respond to that statement, Mark, just so you know. The remark that we should not be in the housing business, I did not respond positively or negatively to that. Just want to be clear on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
But I thought I heard everybody else saying, yeah, we aren't in the housing business.
Next, Linda Wickland.
My name is Linda Wickland. I'm just going to keep it short. I'm going to focus on the fact that government should not be in the business of housing development. That's not the role the governments should be taking. Increasing the levy to give cash to big developers doesn't make a serious proposal, but here we are. In a free market system, government has no responsibility to developers whatsoever. You received a letter dated September 1st from Eric Charpentier, CWC, HRA Executive Director, in which he stated, "We are in the process of marketing these programs to the community. Even the Executive Director realizes it must be marketed. Once the public realizes that they are actually paying for, I suspect they will be very, very unhappy. Your own HRA goals and action steps publication lists the following focus points. Direct marketing to developers. Utilize professional presentations to highlight successes. Purchase land that is not tax forfeited. Increase affordable housing inventory. Identify parcels to market to developers. The county should stop spending our tax dollars to develop properties, plain and simple. Perhaps most alarming, you should never be considered purchasing property to sell it to a developer. Tax forfeited land that the county holds should be sold as soon as legally possible and proceeds used to offset future county property taxes. In closing, I believe taxpayers expect you to be fiscally responsible with their money. Wean yourselves off from the impulse to find a new project and spend every dime the state dangles before us. Say no to taxpayer-funded economic development. Think of our money as for emergency use only. Thank you for your serious thoughts and consideration.
Thank you. Next, Doug Kern.
Yeah, Doug Curran. I wear many, many hats, not just this one, in case you don't know that. I appreciate the comments that Paul Corin made about things coming down from the state, because there are things that we will, as taxpayers, have to pay for because of legislation that just went through. I am also a realtor. I stand here as a realtor. The board received in your packet a letter from the Realtors Association. I serve on the Government Affairs Committee that had discussion, and this is where this letter came from, was the Government Affairs Committee and the Realtors Association. The one comment that went on and on and on that we went back and forth with was, it says here in your letter, it says, we want to emphasize that our support for increasing the reach of housing trust funds is not a call for increasing taxes. That was the one thing that was a resounding thing that kept coming through, was we are not for increasing taxes. Affordable housing means just that, affordable housing. When I have residents as a township supervisor that come to me and say, how do I pay my taxes? When they went up the last time, we had a lot of people come to me and saying, what do I do? And I thank God that the county has programs that people that are facing hardships can go to the county to get relief, tax relief. But as a resident, I see taxes go up. As a realtor, to see taxes go up, it's going to be harder to sell property here if taxes go up. That's one of the first things people look at, is what is the property taxes going to be? So thank you for your input, Paul, and I would just encourage you not to vote for this increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak?
Is that open for anybody to comment at this point?
Yes, I've opened it up, so yes.
One of the things I guess I don't have to say, but I'm going to say it anyways, is the community is aging.
Sir?
There's a lot of
Excuse me,
old fat
sir?
guys like me.
Sir, can you stop, please?
Okay.
We need your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I did that. In my head. My name is Robert Colbinson. I live in Baxter, Minnesota. Thank you. All right. But anyways, we're aging. The community's aging. Most of us are on a fixed income and all the rest of that. And that population is growing by leaps and bounds. Every time there's a price increase in stuff, whether it's taxes, food, or whatever it is, it affects that bottom line that really doesn't increase. It's on a fixed deal. We all understand that. So I'm just asking for the fact that we always keep that in mind. I'm not saying you don't. You guys do a good job overall. I don't disagree with any of that. But in this time, with prices increasing and everything that's going on, if we can take care of the pennies, the dollars will take care of themselves. And as people on a fixed income, every increase you do affects, well, I guess I would say it affects our living capacity as far as what we can do and what we can't do. So anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Good morning. Mike Abrahamson from Oak Lawn Township. and I also own a business in this area that employs 15 people. And the number one complaint that I hear from employees is my paycheck. You know, we're just struggling to, you know, keep above water. So if we can keep our taxes down and help out the citizens of our area, I think it's, you know, we need to be good stewards. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Please come up to the mic and state your name and address.
My name is Rick Felt, Woodrow Road, Brainerd, Minnesota. I moved here about 11 years ago, and since I moved here, I was actually, within the second year, I was a statistic of crime. They broke into my building and stole my four-wheeler and about $8,000 worth of other stuff. Welcome to Brainerd, basically, is what they said. I moved from the 11 county metro area because of the increase in crime. But Carver County actually has a better crime rate than what Crow Wing County does right now. And to me, that was alarming. But at first, when I first moved up here 11 years ago, I think the first 3 years I had a small property tax decrease. And I said, wow, that's really pretty good. It was maybe like $40 a year or something like that. But over the last 5 years, I've had a 47% increase in my property taxes. 47%. And I know that Mr. Barrows is going to blame the state of Minnesota and everything for not doing their job, and I understand the problems that you guys face when you have that kind of situation. But as I stated earlier, for the first time in Crow Wing County, we have people moving out because of the high crime rate. We have people moving out because of the low proficiency levels that they're getting in the public school system. And I could understand that if we were a poor area, but there's a lot of wealth in this area, you know. And what I don't understand, you know, according to that chart, you just showed a 3.99% increase in property taxes. So does that mean that I'm going to expect another 3.99% increase in my personal property tax? Then I'm going to be at 51% increase just in the last 5 years then. And to me, that's alarming. A lot of these people are going through tremendous hardships with the cost of fuel, the cost of everything else. The cost of food is almost doubled in the grocery stores and everything. And they're wondering, can I afford to live in Crow Wing County anymore? You know, and we see this happening. But when people think that, you know, a French philosopher said that your republic is going to fail. And when he stated that the reason is because when you employ government to solve your problems, you no longer have the ability of critical thinking to solve your own problems. Back in the day, a lot of neighbors banded together and they worked on problems. Now they look to government to solve the problem. So that burden comes on you. And I wouldn't envy your job for any minute. I would not want to be in that position. Because every time somebody comes here and they're complaining about a problem, you're trying to figure out an answer. But the Constitution that you swore to uphold also is the one and only thing that will prevent government from skyrocketing out of control with a budget that keeps everybody so poor that they can't afford to do anything. That's my concern. You know, and that's what that French philosopher said. There's going to come a point in time when your government is going to be the demise of your country. And what that means is that they look at government solving problems for what they're paying for it. And as long as the problem's being solved is at a low amount of money, they're going to be okay with that. But as it starts to tip and as the cost of the government keeps on going up and they see less and less, then they get to a tipping point where they say now the government is totally inefficient, it's out of control, and it's removing more and more freedom. A year ago, I sat and I listened to people very passionate about land that they had. They were basically coming up here with tears in their eyes about this land and this was for those boardwalks. And I appreciate Doug Howe, because you actually listened to my concerns, and you allowed a 4-foot dock onto my property. I appreciate that. But I literally witnessed people worshiping a swamp. That's what I witnessed. And if we start worshiping the creation more than the creator, we are in a very dire situation. It says, in God we trust. We can't trust somebody we don't know. And ever since we've kicked God out of our public schools with prayer and everything, the number one, when I've been attending the school board meetings, the number one problem that they're facing right now is mental health issues. That's one of the same reasons that you guys are actually facing too. Why is mental health going off the rails right now? Back in the time of Jesus, do you know what the number one mental, and I know I'm going to be criticized and mocked by making this statement, but I'm going to put my sacred honor on this because I believe in the Word of God. The number one issue of mental health in Jesus' time was demons. And you can mock that all you want, but America is number 3 in believing in angels out of all of the nations. Now, if we believe in angels, don't you believe in the demonic? Do we believe that evil exists when we see Hitler and other people like that? So until you, and it's I actually worked in the tent ministry here last summer with Dean Guzin. I sat in the deliverance area and I delivered 3 people from demons. And when that one lady looked at me and with tears in her eyes, and she says, "Thank you, I haven't felt this good in 20 years. Until you address, if it's a spiritual issue for the health and well-being of this community, it's a simple fix. It doesn't take very much to cast out demons. And I know that I'm going to be ridiculed and mocked by saying that, but I will stand on the Word of God. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak? Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak? Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak? Okay.
Madam Chair?
This
One
lady
hand went
just
up.
raised her hand.
My name is Karen Knudsen. I'm a new resident. I've been here for 6 months. When I purchased my home in February, or at the end of February, the taxes said it would be $2,800. And now it is 30. I'm going to pay it, and it's like 36, between 36 and 3,700. I don't know how that happened so quickly, but it has. And now I'm going to look at another 5%. So I'm, right, 5.5% taxes, is that?
Well, ours is not 5.5, ours is 3.899. But then.
Oh, yeah, 3.99.
But then you also have to look at the city of Baxter, which is 7.1, I believe.
I live in
I read it in the
Baxter.
paper, I don't know, someone is 7.1 anyway. But you have to look at Baxter's, you have to look at the school district. It's not just our tax. There are 3 lines on your tax statement that you have to look at.
Okay. But it has gone up considerably from what I thought it would. And I have a backyard that is swampy. I had the water department come out, and they said that there's that drainage project is done now. So the one that they did a drainage project. Anybody know about that? Your water department does, because he told me. But he said that they're.
Baxter is
Oh,
different
okay.
than the county.
Okay. So for me, since I've moved here, my expenses have increased a great deal more than I thought that they would. And it's hard. I'm on a fixed income. My husband died 2 years ago. I had to move. My son lives in Brainerd, so I moved here. But it's been taxing, here. So it's like, I'm not sure this was my right choice. It is for the people that are here, they're good people. It is for being close to my son. But I do hope that you consider those of us who are in a different place. My income cut in half when my husband died. There are other things that have happened that I've lost. So you lose a lot of things and then you move, and now I'm paying a lot of things. So please do consider the tax. It is very important. So,
Ms. Knutson, if you would like to see me after the meeting, I'd love to have someone from our assessor's office look more deeply into your case to answer your question of what happened.
okay, thank
It's
you.
an answerable question.
Madam Chair, can I say something? I know that I get laughed at when I say, Grandma Johnson or Grandma Jones or whatever I say, because I say there's people that are living on Social Security, maybe $1,200 a month, and when their property taxes go up $100 for the year or $200, somebody might say, well, big deal. Yeah, it is a big deal, and I've said that on and on and on. Here's the perfect example right here of what I've been talking about for the last 11 years.
I agree. All right, is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
Sorry about that, but I'm back up here. But anyways, the other thing about, HRA housing is it brings on more burdens as far as tax money that's going to go out to all this stuff. From what I'm understanding, if I'm wrong, I'll be corrected, but those are the things we need to consider is when we're bringing this kind of stuff in. Are we really, yes, I like helping people, but are we bringing in more expenses that we're going to have to fund? So that's another thing, with this 64 housing, unit housing project over in Baxter, that when you ask about it, nobody knows what it's really for. And then we're going to do this one in downtown Brainerd. So what is that going to do to our community and our taxes? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Is there anyone else? Is there anyone else? That's final. Now we go to the county board.
Madam Chair, you have enclosed in your packet a request that has a preliminary levy certification at $777,880. That is a 3.5% increase over last year's funding for the HRA. I think there is a great deal of concern in the room if that number is higher, as was discussed and proposed. That is not what's in your resolution today. There is another issue that has come up with the HRA levy, and it is, where does it apply? Historically, statute is written in such a way that citizens should not have to pay for two HRAs. If the county has an HRA, then whatever that levy is applies countywide unless a city decides to have its own HRA. And there are a number of cities in Crow Wing County, Brainerd, Pequot Lakes, Crosby, that have their own HRA. What that means is the county levy for the HRA does not extend into those municipalities. When you're funding the operations of the HRA, that makes really good sense. But when you're funding the Housing Trust Fund, which is going to fund projects all over the place, that does not really make good sense. That is, I think, violating a basic issue of fairness. I think the projects that the folks mentioned, one of them is in Brainerd. And so then it doesn't seem right. So my timing stinks. Sorry about that, folks. My timing stinks. I would like a little more time to research that. You have in your packet a request to certify just a 3.5% increase. If that's your wishes, so be it. I would like a little more time to find out what we can and can't do about changing how we spread that before you certify. That is your choice. So I wanted to highlight the issue for you. It has recently come to my attention that that is an issue. And so do you wish to certify today? Or do you wish to table and discuss it more? You only have a 3.5% increase in front of you today. So I think that speaks to many of the concerns that I think folks came into the room to express. They saw a large increase, and it's not there. That's what I want you to know, is it's not there. What would you like to do?
Madam Chair, I would make the motion to approve the 3.5% increase.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of a second.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion to table.
And that's non-debatable, so it's tabled.
Madam Chair, you still need a second.
Do we still need a second?
Yep, Madam Chair, I'll second that.
Okay, I've got seconds all around. I'll take John's. Motion by Commissioner Barrows, second by Commissioner Lubke. And it is tabled.
You have to vote on it.
Do we still have to vote on it? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
I don't think, and I want you guys to know, because you came here for a reason today, right? And I want you to know that I highly doubt we're going to consider any increase beyond that which was considered today. Okay? Just so you know.
Okay, next thing on the additional business. Adjournment.
Madam
Motion.
Chair, I would make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Barrows, second by Commissioner Coring. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.